The Milwaukee Bucks finished the 2024 preseason with a 1-3 record after a 109-84 loss to the Mavericks. But look, final scores don't really matter all that much in the preseason. What really matters is what we see on the floor. And there were quite a few things to watch in this preseason finale, even without some of the Bucks regular. We'll get into some key thoughts on the Bucks' newest additions and the young guys on today's show of Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What it do? Welcome to Locked On Bucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Camille Davis. You can catch me weekly on the Technical File podcast as well as the Pack a Day podcast. Joining me is Frank Madden, founder of BrewHoop.com and longtime voice of the pod. And we appreciate you so much for tuning in. And thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast as well as on YouTube. And you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So, Frank, in the Bucks preseason finale tonight, there was no Giannis, no Dame, no Chris, no Brooke, no Bobby. But the Mavericks had everyone but Luka and Kleber and Dante Exum, who's not going to be in the rotation for quite some time with his injury. And I thought this was kind of an interesting setup to watch how some of the Bucks' newest additions and the young guys looked, especially on the defensive end. But again, it's preseason. These aren't lineups you're really going to see in the regular season. So what stood out to you the most, Frank, from like the vet role players? Let's start with the vets first. What stood out to you?
Pat Connaughton.
Let's give him some love.
I mean, Camille, let's be honest. There is like nothing people wanted less than for Pat Connaughton to be the big winner of the preseason. I feel like, people have been ready to kick Pat to the curb.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
For a while. And everybody wanted, one of the young guys to make their claim on, a wing rotation spot and Pat to be, on the outs. And instead, I mean, Pat was probably, among the role players, he's most consistent guy we saw in the preseason. His first game, we talked about him cutting and doing kind of old school Pat Connaughton stuff. And I think he finished 10 or 19 or something like that from the field in the preseason. And tonight, I think he had another couple threes, had a step back at one point. And, Camille, in the history of great pick and roll partners, Stockton, Malone, Steve Nash and Amari Stoudemire, Pat Connaughton and Anses Pasechniks? Question mark.
Listen, they had some real momentum going in this game.
Yeah, Pat was dealing in the pick and roll, which he's always had the ability to kind of do that thing where he drives from kind of the right side or from like the left side, kind of gets middle, and if it's Giannis, like sometimes he'll be able to kind of do that little wraparound pass back to Giannis for a dunk, or he can do it occasionally, right? Like nobody's like calling plays for Pat Connaughton to get pick and roll touches, but especially on a night like tonight where all of your regular vets were pretty much sitting out, and the offense for both teams was terrible to start.
Yeah.
Pat, I thought, gave them a nice little shot, and so we'll see. I mean, hopefully for the sake of Pat and the Bucks, this is, a good start and a good omen for him to have a bounce back season, as Justin's been kind of jokingly projecting and predicting here for a while now. And yeah, I mean it's again, it's not really what I think probably any Bucks fan wanted. But I think to me, the kind of big takeaway of the preseason was Doc played the young guys, and it was almost like to show that they just are like
not ready.
Not ready. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even somebody like AJ Green, who obviously was very solid last year. Just never, it hasn't finally found his 3-point shot consistently this preseason. And obviously if AJ Green's not, hitting threes, then his value is going to be limited. So, So we'll see. I don't know that I'm not really worried about AJ Green, because the one thing the dude is going to be able to do is find his shot typically. But yeah, everybody else, it just feels like, I don't know, just like a summer stuck in mud. Going back to
Mhm.
Vegas when this group of young guys just were horrendous
Yeah,
together.
didn't look good.
Like, they just could not play together, and that's the bummer of this last game, not having any of those regular guys, because like we've said it before, it seems like these young guys you can only possibly play them when they're surrounded by a bunch of
Mhm.
vets who can kind of cover up, especially their offensive limitations. Um, and I don't know, just a very weird preseason in general. Just it's felt like, I mean, we talked about the other day, like AJ Johnson and Tyler Smith, for whatever reason, like whether it was Doc just wanting to kind of speed run their development and try to give them a bunch of minutes now because he knows they're not going to earn him
Mhm.
later, at least this in their rookie years, like just trying to get them some reps. Those two guys start tonight. Um, I think AJ led the team in preseason minutes. Um,
AJ Johnson, yeah.
yeah, AJ Johnson did. And again, kind of another weird night in terms of, like, I don't know how long we waited for Marjon Beauchamp to get any minutes.
Yeah.
I think he may have had the best field goal percentage of any of the kind of young roster guys. He was like at 39% for the preseason, which is fantastic compared to, I think AJ Johnson's at
He
17%.
was 17%. Tyler Smith was 24%. AJ Green was 27%. And Andre Jackson Jr. was 20% from the field throughout the preseason.
I mean, it's like they're playing a different sport, right? It's like,
At this
I
point,
mean,
yeah.
these are like baseball batting averages, basically, right? Like Jackson Chorio was much more likely to get a hit than AJ Johnson or Tyler Smith were to make a shot in the preseason. And that ain't normal. And
It was crazy.
again, those guys are so young. Yeah, of course, like I'm not going to sit here and tell you like you need to close the book on them. But um, man, that was like just a really rough preseason, especially for AJ Johnson. I mean, he 0 for
Mhm.
11 tonight, 2 for 15 last game. I think our friend of the pod, Nathan Marzion, said he's like 0 for his last 19 or something like that. I mean, this kind of stuff that doesn't seem possible. It's
And it's
just
so
it's
crazy
just
because
tough.
he gets himself into really good spots
Mhm.
where you're like, oh, like I love the burst of speed to get to the rim. He had some nice like step backs in the mid range that he got to, but nothing was falling for him. So it was, like you said, really jarring to see. And as for Tyler Smith, somebody who we've heard a lot about his jumper and how smooth it is, so on and so forth, wasn't really connecting for him in the preseason. But one thing about Tyler Smith that did stand out to me was just he's a physical rebounder. So I'll give him that. That is not something that was on my Tyler Smith bingo card early on at this point in his career, but he was going after those boards. So like for both of the rookies, Tyler and AJ Johnson, it was one of those things where it's like you see some flashes every so often, but they're clearly not ready to contribute at a high level yet. And that's okay. That is perfectly fine. I don't think that most people were expecting for either one of them to come out and be ready to, be seventh, eighth man off the bench at this point. Some might have hoped, but I'm not sure if that was a realistic expectation for them. So I'm not too worried about them. Wasn't a great showing for either one of the two rookies, but they got some time to grow into it still. But we did get a chance to see all three of the Bucks' newest free agent additions in this game as well. Take some pretty good minutes in the first half. So we'll talk a bit about what we saw from the Bucks' newest additions after this. HIMS is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your very own couch. The process is 100% online, so there is no need for uncomfortable doctor visits. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and the medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for free. With hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, HIMS can help you find the ED option that works for you. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products, which are not approved or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with the healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. All right, Frank, we talked about the rookies for a little bit. We gave Pat Connaughton his flowers, which, let me add, were deserved because he was a big question mark and somebody going into training camp and everything where I'm like, I think Doc's going to give the young guys a chance, to see if they can outplay them, and we'll see how that looks. And PC responded with a pretty good preseason. But when looking at, Gary Trent Jr. and Taurean Prince, even DeLon Wright, who had 9 minutes in this game, but really the bulk of the minutes for the new guys went to Taurean Prince and Gary Trent Jr. What did you take away from their performance tonight? Because for me, seeing Taurean Prince just be in the passing lanes, active hands, poking the ball away, just how physical of a defender he can be, I already had hopes of I can see this working out a bit better than Jay Crowder did in Milwaukee last year.
Yeah, I mean the bar again is not particularly high for each of those dudes as far as who they're trying to replace. I mean, in fairness, Malik Beasley did about, from a role playing standpoint, kind of all as much as you could hope for from Malik Beasley last year. The shooting, was really good. The volume was very high. I don't know if Gary Trent can get threes up at a rate comparable to Malik. He's a super high volume guy.
I don't think he can.
Which is really important. I think we saw Gary, especially early, was pretty important with those young guys because somebody had to be able to just sort of take the ball and get a shot up that had a chance. And his numbers tonight, 6 for 14, I think 12 points, 13 points, something like that. Nothing to write home about efficiency wise, but that kind of highlights for him, I think, a couple of things. One, I think especially if Chris is absent on back-to-backs, hopefully we see him on opening night, question mark.
Apparently TNT said that on their broadcast that they expect Chris to be ready for the regular season, but I was watching Bally, so I didn't personally hear that, but I saw a report saying TNT should be ready.
Stephanie Reddy, I couldn't really hear it very well. Stephanie Reddy did a report on him. So we'll see, right? I mean, Doc's kind of been teasing, it'd be nice to get him to play 2 preseason games. Then it'd be nice to get, and then we got nothing.
Right.
So I don't know. Doc is not a reliable narrator as far as injuries go, right? I mean, think back to the playoffs when he made it seem like Giannis was on the verge of coming back, and then you look back
find
and
out,
you look back and it's like he wasn't really close to playing. So I don't take a lot from Doc's injury prognoses or whatever else. I mean, I'm glad that nobody seems worried or concerned. But again, and to be clear, 90% of the preseason for a veteran team like the Bucks is just get through it healthy, survive it, avoid even just random knocks like the muscle injuries or whatever that don't seem like a big deal, and then they drag, and it's 2 weeks in the season and the guy's still not at his best. So fingers crossed we don't have anything of that nature between now and and next Wednesday, I guess, season starts. But it's we'll just have to see. But I think with Gary Trent, it will be interesting. He's one of the few guys on this team. It's like him and Bobby, I would say, are the guys who, when the big guns may be resting or injured, you're gonna need those guys to take shots, make shots, and be guys that can soak up possessions. Because as we've been saying, none of the young guys can go do that, And as far as even the vets, right? DeLon Wright, that's not DeLon Wright's role, right? He's not a guy that is going to pop up and score 20 points in a game, right? Maybe he'll make a few threes one night or something like that, but he's not even a
consistent
type.
20.
Exactly. He's a two-way guy, but really the defense is what has kind of been his calling card. So, I think for Gary, happy that elbow injury on the opening preseason game ended up not being seemingly a big deal. And we saw it tonight. He kind of got them a few buckets early and doing it in ways that maybe we won't see as much during the regular season when he's out there with all the high end guys, right? He had to kind of manufacture some buckets tonight. And the realistic side of this is that he has not been a guy that can efficiently manufacture a bunch of points, right? That's really not who he's been historically. So you hope he doesn't have to, But there are going to be nights where he does have to do that, especially if, I think,
Mhm.
especially with Chris, right? When Chris is out, you're probably going to have, Taurean Prince starting in his place. And, TP, I think, is a really solid fit. He's going to knock down some threes. He'll play physical defense, but he's not going to create shots. And so I think that's an
Right.
area where Gary Trent's going to be really important. Because again, I still feel like this team is short one creator. And maybe that doesn't really matter a whole lot when they're healthy because Dame, Giannis, Chris, Brooke, Bobby, like you've got
Mhm.
enough firepower there. But TBD, I think when they have injuries, it can start to get. I think the offense kind of is going to quickly get challenged, and I think that's what we saw last spring, like especially with Chris out for an extended period, and Dame maybe not being consistently at the level we wanted. They didn't score points that the first half of the season they scored tons and tons of points and were an awesome offense. In the second half, after Doc arrived, like they tailed off pretty notably on offense. So I don't think they can tail off on offense, given that their defense again I think will be probably decent to hopefully above average, but it's not going to be elite calling card type defense. So we'll see. But again, job one was just surviving the preseason and getting to next Wednesday with all your dudes. And fingers crossed, nothing happens between now and then, except Chris Middleton maybe getting some 5-on-5 in and
Yeah.
doing some real practices. So you've got a few days, obviously, of practices and getting ready, which you're not really going to have a whole lot of during the regular season.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point about seeing last season how the lack of shot creation once you had Giannis out, Dame out, Chris out at some points. I mean, that's part of why the second half was so tough to watch, because even once you got Gary Trent Jr. out, you got Taurean Prince out, you got Pat Connaughton out, who was also able to generate some points. It was just really rough seeing this offense try to operate. And the young guys in particular, when they were all out there together, it just looked as chaotic, I think, is a good word to use for that. And I wonder if part of it is because, Doc hasn't installed a lot of the offense, and a lot of it for the preseason was just kind of free flowing, learning how to read and react and play off of one another. And you have a bunch of young guys out there who are still trying to figure out the NBA game at a certain level. So it's not going to look as clean for them when they step into that role. But I mean, we're done with the preseason now. So that is a celebration in itself. And before we turn our attention fully to the regular season, I do want to take just one more look back at this preseason for the Bucks and just main takeaways to come out of these 4 exhibition games. So, final thought.
This is going to be our 20. This is going to be a 20-minute segment on Liam Robbins, right? We need to get people ready for him.
As a preview, everybody. It's a tease, ladies and
Tease.
gentlemen. So, final thoughts on the Bucks preseason coming up next. It is an exciting time in the world of sports right now. October tends to be like my favorite time in sports because there's just so much going on. You got the playoff and MLB, got the NBA season kicking off, you got the NFL season going on, you got hockey back, you got college football. It's like everything is happening now. So make sure that you are locked in with FanDuel. It is the best place to be whenever you get one of those hunches during the game. Like, I think I want to put some money down on something. With FanDuel, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the very same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Again, y'all, $200 guaranteed in bonus bets on your first $5 bet. So head over to FanDuel.com to get started. Again, that's FanDuel, FanDuel.com. All right, Frank, final preseason thoughts for the Bucks here. I mean, you already said the main takeaway for me, which is they got through it healthy. We've seen it around the league with, the Thunder, Isaiah Hartenstein, he's going to be out 5 to 6 weeks before he's reevaluated. We saw with Paul George, we got the news of Kawhi Leonard, being indefinitely out. Like, things happen during the preseason. You can't stop that. So for the Bucks to make it through with no big injuries, especially after the first game where it looked like Gary Trent Jr. was going to be out for a while, but lo and behold, he's back the very next game. Getting through it healthy, I think, is the biggest takeaway. But what else stood out to you just from the Bucks preseason? If you want to start with Liam, go right on ahead.
I mean, we have to acknowledge Ansej Pasechniks, who I was determined to not say his name at all this preseason.
AP.
Number 18. Um, he had a nice first half, made a bunch
He
of
did.
shots, and again, very weird player in terms of being like a 7-footer who's not really a defensive guy and doesn't shoot. So he's again like how that guy finds a role in the NBA long term in the year 2024. I don't really see it. But he ate some minutes tonight, made some shots, so good on you, Ansej. Um, yeah, I mean, I think overall, I think it's just a really difficult preseason to take a lot from because kind of as we said, only a couple games where we had Giannis, no Chris,
Mhm.
um, and just felt like these young guys, right? Like I just look at Andre Jackson Jr., right? What do you make of Andre's preseason? I have
It was
no idea.
disappointing.
Like he would felt like he was at down the pecking order a ways. I don't know how much he played with Dame and Giannis. I don't know if he played with Giannis at
I don't
all,
think
to
so.
be
Yeah.
honest. I don't know if he was on the floor at all, which again, maybe there's arguments why you wouldn't want to play him with Giannis. He did have that one calm late three against the Bulls where I believe he started running down the floor before the shot
Before it
even
went
went in,
in. Yep.
which we could easily joke about how it's because he thought he was going to miss, but no, he looked like he was Steph Currying us with that move. Um, yeah, I just don't know what to make of Andre as an example, and he's just a guy who's got to play with talent around him to be at his best, and we just really didn't see that, and a lot of it was just because you only get 2 games of Giannis and no
Hmm.
Chris, so limited minutes to really kind of even have much sample size. But I am just really curious. I know we've talked about throughout the preseason, like what do we make of AJ and even Tyler Smith being like the first young guys off the bench? Like, I again, like AJ just being like completely unable to make a shot here, other than that one game, like makes me think that this is just Doc trying to get the youngest guys reps,
Hmm.
just to see like what the heck they can do, because he knows he's not going to be able to
Yeah.
play him a lot, or he was hoping to see maybe something that really probably didn't. Um, so I don't know what to make of that, but I think unfortunately it really gave us basically nothing of like, no sample of real kind of usefulness with the other guys because we just didn't see them play with anybody that matters. So yeah, just I don't know, kind of in part just because they didn't play well. Well, mostly because
Hmm.
they didn't play well, and partly just because of who they were playing with. But it just felt like a throwaway preseason basically for most of the young guys. Other than AJ who just needed the reps, but just was terrible and could not make a shot to save his life. So I don't know. I mean, and it just raises kind of interesting questions. Like I'm just really curious. Like, are they gonna send AJ to Oshkosh a lot? I mean, I think he needs game reps.
I do too.
I don't think you just leave him with the big club and let him learn from Dame the entire time and whatever. I mean, the guy's barely played basketball. Like, he barely played last year in Australia. He had the weird thing in high school where he, was on at Kanye's like high school or whatever it was, and
Hmm.
then they disbanded and he had to find a new school. Like, he's just had a very strange kind of stop start journey, and it just feels like he's a guy that needs to get reps against real basketball players. And so, as much as it's good to kind of let him get a feel for NBA lifestyle and have him
Hmm.
travel with the team and stuff like that. This is where you want to put him on the Badger bus to Oshkosh as much as you can to just get reps. And again, it doesn't mean you stick him there for a month straight, but we've seen this with Chris Livingston is a good example, right? A guy that everybody knew was like young and not really going to play for the big club, but I think made use of his time in Oshkosh a fair
Hmm.
bit last year. So I don't know. We'll kind of see, but yeah, just I don't know. The older I get, Camille, like the more or the less I bring myself to kind of get too wrapped up and you know overstating the importance of preseason. We played, we saw the Bucks play 4 games, so it's like very little sample and even less sample with the players that matter. So it's like let's just hit the sim to end and get to the regular season. And I'm super excited for opening night.
Me too.
And as much as the preseason has been kind of stop start, I mean, the Sixers, Joel Embiid hasn't played at all, and Paul George, unclear if he's actually going to be ready after his knee hyperextension, which I think Jeff Stotts at In Street Clothes, the kind of database of all things injuries. I can't remember. I think he may have said it's like a roughly like average and like timeout was like maybe like a week or something like that from a knee hyperextension. So kind of puts it right in the question mark zone for coming back in
Yeah.
time for opening night. But even if he does come back, obviously Paul George, may not be at full strength. But yeah, we'll see. So certainly, let's just say the Bucks have an opportunity as much as they did not, get up to full speed maybe in the preseason. Hopefully they will be more healthy than the Sixers and have had more reps together than the Sixers on opening night. So let's win another preseason game in Philly, Camille. Like let's just start things off with a bang. We saw them do it last year in the opener in Milwaukee against Philly. Like just do it again. Maybe win by more, right? Let's not leave
Yeah.
it too much drama. And let's start. The Giannis proves the disrespecters wrong campaign. Let's start it off with a big night against Joel Embiid. That's all I ask for. I'm a simple man.
Man, I'm just ready for to talk about games that count
Yeah.
towards the regular season and seeing the starters and the lineups more often, seeing the rotations and seeing if a lot of things that we thought might come to fruition over the summer actually do during the regular season. But again, I'm similar to you. I would hope that there's nobody out there reacting to these 4 preseason games as a big indicator on what the Bucks regular season is going to look like, because there's only so much you can gather from what we saw during these 4 games here, to the points that you made, Frank. And for the young guys, like what stood out to me too with them was like you saw some flashes, but again, what I saw is that they're not ready to contribute yet, and that's fine. AJ Green, as you mentioned, the shot wasn't falling for him, and I'm not super concerned. The one thing I will say about AJ Green is just given the fact that the last time we saw him in the playoffs, he was struggling a bit with that 3-point shot there. So to come into preseason and also still kind of be struggling with that 3-point shot, it's one of those things like I was hoping to see, the ball going in a hoop for him, just because the last few times we saw him, it hasn't. But I'm not necessarily worried about AJ Green. It just would have been nice to see heading into the regular season. Who else stands out to me? Just for the young guys, I will say this too. It's going to be ups and downs. So I would caution people to not make harsh judgments after one game, whether it's really good or it's really bad, the flashes that we see from the minutes that we do see. But all in all, I'm just ready for the games to count. I'm ready to see Giannis. I'm ready to see Chris Middleton come back, even though ESPN thinks he's a 5th option, or can he be a 5th option for the team? So I'm just ready for Bucks basketball to come back, because all the conversations that's been going around this team, I'm ready for them to end, for the ball to roll out, and for the play to do the talking.
I enjoyed you missed on the TNT broadcast, Camille, because you're watching Bally's. They had like the Bucks offseason recap, and it was like signings, and it was the list of signings began with James Akinjo, whatever that guy, the guy who was with the Herd last year and had
Yes.
a camp deal, but now has been waived. So he's not even on the team anymore, but they still had James Akinjo first. And I was like, oh, did they literally just put it in alphabetical order or something like that? But then the second guy was Ansej Pasechniks. So it's like, are you going by last name? If you're going by last name, okay, I guess Akinjo is the first one.
Right.
But if you're then Pasechniks ain't second. So like seriously, some freaking intern put those 2 dudes as the first 2 signings and then downloads. And then you keep going. It's like, okay, towards the end, Gary Trent, DeLon Wright. It's like, come on, guys, who's making these graphics? Like, do better.
It's no wonder they think the Bucks ain't gonna do good this season. They think those are like the
Exactly.
first 2 big free agent
Exactly.
signings.
But look, Camille, I love it. I love the cynicism. I love people saying, I don't know, I think there was, I don't know, somewhere I saw something that some person or group picked the Bucks to finish 7th, whatever else.
Yep.
Great. Doubt the Bucks and assume the least of this team. The Sixers are going to be so awesome because of such an exciting summer, and the Knicks now, they made it all the way to the second round and won one more game than the Bucks last year, despite the Bucks being, a train wreck, on fire, covered in peanut butter or whatever. Everybody get excited about those teams, and then let's see the Bucks
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even saying win the East. Let's see the Bucks come out, be in the second spot, like 20 games in. That's everybody better be singing Giannis Antetokounmpo's praises.
Talk to him, Frank.
Everybody better be saying, "Whoa, Giannis,
Mm-hmm.
MVP, dragging this Bucks team that
I know that's right.
shouldn't have home court in the first round." Right? Don't forget, the Bucks aren't good. The wheels are coming off.
Mm-hmm. They're too old.
They're too old. No hope in Milwaukee. They can't draft for shit. The young players suck. There's no hope. Great. Just let's all get that in the baseline. Expectations low. Question Giannis's ability to carry this team.
Yeah.
And when he does, you better believe we're going to keep the receipts on that, and you better give the dude credit. And look, narrative so often on things like MVP is based on expectations and are you exceeding expectations, etc. So I really hope that if and when Giannis is doing Giannis stuff and the Bucks are actually good, that people just apply the rules fairly the way that they usually do. I'm not saying that's like the best way to apply the rules, but let's give the Bucks some love. I don't care if it's like that's the thing, guys. Like, I get it, like it's always more fun when the national media likes your team and makes you feel good about like them being a 10 or whatever. But guess what? Preseason, like in the summer, whatever, it doesn't matter at all. Like until they're actually playing, I get it. Like once they're playing, of course, I get it. Like you want them to be looking good and getting credit and stuff like that. Like that's fair. That's what that's normal fan stuff to want your team to get credit when there's actual real games being played. But right now, fine, whatever. Low expectations, love it, lock it in, and let's let them play basketball. Let's let Giannis and Dame show them what they got. Like great. I'm looking forward to Wednesday. Let's do this. Game 1 of 82, Camille.
Yep.
Let's have some fun.
Absolutely. This man, Frank Madden, was preaching y'all to end the show this week. That's a perfect way to end this episode, the Friday episode, a beautiful way to head into the weekend. So before we get out of here, thank you to everybody for making Locked On Bucks your first listen of the day. For your second listen, make sure you checked out the Locked On NBA season previews on Locked On NBA. They got you covered in the West and in the East with the contenders and the pretenders. 6-episode series with everything you need to know about the NBA season forthcoming. You can find it on Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you just want to check out the Bucks specific one and contenders of the East, you can find that on the Locked On Bucks stream as well. So for Frank and myself, have a good weekend, everybody. We'll catch you all later.